To issues and debates, holism and reductionism. In this session, we're going to look at holism and reductionism specifically as a level of explanation in psychology. We're going to talk about biological reductionism as well as environmental reductionism, which is your stimulus response from behaviorism. We'll also talk about emergence, and we will discuss briefly psychic reductionism. So what is holism? Remember, the key features of holism include an emphasis on the whole as being more than the sum of its parts. We use these qualitative methods such as self-report, maybe questionnaires, interviews. We are interested in these emergent properties, and we'll talk more about this, but essentially what behaviour emerges from the interaction of these simple mechanisms. Some examples of a holistic approach is the humanistic approach, social psychology, psychoanalysis, and some abnormal psychology as well. We're also interested in psychopathology and perception. Perception's a good one to sort of get your head around. Compare perception to vision. Vision is just the straight mechanics of how light hits the back of the retina and is registered by the brain. But perception is how we tie all that visual information in together to create a holistic perception. And that's why visual illusions work, is because they affect our perception, not our vision. Reductionism then, key features are behaviour can be explained by breaking it down into smaller components. We have this concept of parsimony, which is really important to us in science. Parsimony is all about taking complex phenomena and using it to explain explaining it via a simple underlying principle. So the learning theory is parsimonious. It's a very simple operant conditioning, reward, punishment, or classical conditioning, can explain attachment, can explain romance, can explain all sorts. Behaviour and mental processes should be studied using rigorous scientific methods. That's the reductionist approach. We're going to break it down and measure it in a lab. And reductionism is a spectrum, remember, from hard reductionism like biology, where you go to the doctor and you say I'm depressed and they give you SSRIs, compared to the holistic approach, which is you go to the doctor and they work out an entire plan to solve the problem. So the extreme reductionist would be medication. Moderate reductionist might be a single form of therapy. Less reductionist would be multiple methods all being used. Evaluation reductionism, and obviously the evaluations of humanism are going to be the opposite to these. It can be scientifically tested, it may lack validity, can't explain why behaviour happens in the wider context of behaviour. Behaviorism, for example, very scientifically rigorous, explains how learning occurs, but not why learning occurs. The biggest problem for behaviorism from a memory point of view, why are some things easier to learn than others? Why are some things just so resistant to learning, no matter what the rewards are? Okay, emergence. This is a really valuable idea. Emergence, I first come across when I studied artificial life. Artificial life is a fascinating area of computer science, cognitive science, psychology. Artificial life seeks to find out whether we can program programs with very simple algorithms. These are simple sets of rules, and find emergent properties that come out of them. The two pictures are two examples of emergence. One in the natural world, the V shape that the birds are flying. It feels like it's almost coordinated, that the leader's telling everyone what to do, but instead they're actually operating on a really simple, parsimonious rule. Keep to the right of the nearest bird and slightly behind. Now, the leader is maybe running a slightly different program, but that's what happens. That produces the V shape. The V is emergent, it's not intended. Equally, this is an example of an artificial life system that has very simple rules that basically can show you how relatively simple behaviours can have emergent properties in a much more complex way. If we look at the examples down here, we have the V formation that you often see birds flying in. That is an emergent property, that shape, from simple rules, which state keep to the right and slightly behind the nearest bird. So if everyone does that, or if you're on the left and at the back, these simple rules can produce a V formation without any coordination. Birds also know when the lead bird is tired, it falls back, they automatically know how to replace him without any direction. We can program this stuff in computers as well, so many emergent things come out of basic computer systems. One recent example was that they programmed an AI to learn communication from Twitter, and within about an hour, this artificial intelligence was uploading racist and sexist tweets because it had learned that behavior from the environment and they had to bring them down pretty quickly. That was not an intention, that was emergent. One other example I'll just show you of an emergent program is this one. These little organisms have some really basic programming. Basically, they have move around in a random direction and eat a bit of food when you come in contact with it. And this produces some very complex behaviour. They can reproduce and all sorts of other things. If you're interested in artificial life, come and see me. This was my third year project at uni. It's an area I'm still fascinated with today. So the biological approach. We refer to biological reductionism as physiological reductionism, claiming that behaviour can be reduced down to having a physiological cause by these mechanisms or processes. This could be a neurotransmitter explanation, neurochemical explanation, neuroanatomical, genetic, you name it. It's all reducing it down. If you go to a doctor who subscribes to this approach with depression, they'll prescribe you drugs. The evolutionary reductionism is about reducing it down to evolved behaviours, natural selection, and so forth. Behaviorism. This is an example of environmental reductionism. The emphasis is on stimulus response. It's incredibly reductionist. It's very hard reductionism. And it attempts to explain complex behaviour like love, romance, attachment, all these things using very simple parsimonious rules. Reward. So the only reason why you fall in love with someone is because they reward you or because of classical conditioning. Emphasis on laboratory experiments. It even says things like language and thought are just examples of behaviour. Cognitive approach can be said to be reductionist in a basic way, and that is that when we try to explain it by using the metaphor of machines, we are reducing our explanation of complex behaviour down to this input, processor, output machine. It's better than the stimulus response approach, but it's still reductionist. One solution for this might be neural networks. These are artificial neural networks that behave the same way as the neurons in your brain, with different parts of the network firing, having different consequences. This is a much more holistic approach because you can get emergent properties from a neural network. So it can learn, like I said about the AI that became racist and sexist, you can learn. That's an emergent property. Psychic reductionism. This is not a huge part and not referenced on the spec, but obviously if you're reducing it down to someone's childhood, a single event for example, fixation at a stage, you are essentially simplifying the behaviour. And you may not be taking into account other factors that are more important, like adult learning or conscious choice. We use case studies, so it's very holistic, and behaviour is ultimately reduced to these childhood experiences. Humanism bucks against reductionism. It says that holism is the only way forward, and it's against what it sees as the dehumanising effects and aspects of the approaches. To be against it's completely against reductionism in any form and doesn't think laboratory experiments have any role. The starting point is from the position of the self. The self directs, believes, and all the actions moving towards self-actualization. This is done in a holistic context. So that's humanism, very holistic, takes the entire individual into account. That's issues, debates, holism and reductionism. If you have any questions, as always, please let me know. Make sure you're revising this content as you go along, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much.